Now that the Ahsoka series has come to an end, and I've had some time to reflect on it, I definitely have mixed feelings about the show and think it could have been much better, but based off of other Disney Star Wars projects, it could have also been far, far worse. But I guess my critique of this show is similar to my critique of most Disney Plus content, and that is that almost every intriguing mystery or really anything built up throughout the plot seems to always get a really unsatisfying answer or conclusion. Like Baylan Skull, for example. Masterfully played by the late great Ray Stevenson, was by far the most interesting thing the show had going for it, but his culmination is simply standing on a statue. I mean, come on, man, you gotta give us a little more than that. Now, I know he was standing on statues of the Mortis gods from that one episode of Clone Wars, but what if someone hadn't seen that episode of Clone Wars? They would have no idea what those statues were and would probably feel extremely underwhelmed. Hell, I actually know what the statues are, and I still feel underwhelmed. We couldn't at least get a glimpse of one of the gods or hear some dialogue between Baylan and whoever was calling him. I know they'll probably recast the role of Baylan, so his story is likely to be continued in Season 2 or a Dave Filoni Star Wars film, but why did it have to be so open-ended? Shows have finales for a reason, and some form of resolution or end of a storyline is expected. And I know things are set up for future storylines, but who had a completed story arc during the course of the show? Maybe you could argue Sabine did, as she went from abandoning her master and joining the enemy, to realizing her mistake and paying for her actions by getting stuck on Peridia. But I don't think our main character even got a satisfying character arc. At the start of the series, Ahsoka seems to just be going through the motions, and while she is attempting to stop Thrawn's return, she seems to not have much conviction or belief in anything, as she's just kind of boring and stands in the background crossing her arms. She's not a Jedi, not a Sith, helps the New Republic at times, but doesn't seem to want too much involvement with it, so what is she really? I know we got the great sequence with her and Anakin in the world between worlds, but what really changed with her character after that? Besides wearing different robes, I'd honestly be hard-pressed to pick out what's changed. I mean, she treats Sabine a bit nicer despite being betrayed by her, so I guess she's more understanding, but I don't really see that as a fully fleshed out and satisfying character arc. And for a show literally titled Ahsoka, I just expected more emphasis on her specific journey and growth throughout. I think the reason The Mandalorian Season 1 and Season 2 stand out so much amongst other Star Wars Disney Plus content is because at its core it's the story of Din Djarin and Grogu, and focuses on their bond and connection. For as side quest heavy as the plot is, the show works so well because the dynamic is highlighted and given the proper time to develop. So with Ahsoka, I was hoping for her character arc and growth to be in the spotlight in the same way, as she is an interesting character with interesting lore to explore, but it just wasn't nearly explored enough in my humble opinion. Another thing I have to bring up with this show is the lightsaber fights. They were pretty solid. They were better than the fights in the sequel trilogy for sure, but didn't really match the choreography of the prequel trilogy. And as Ahsoka is a prequel character and we got to see Anakin duel again, I was really hoping for some prequel-style combat. Like, it was cool to see Hayden back, but comparing his fighting here to that of Episode 3 is just night and day. So the action was better than what we've been getting from the franchise as of late, but not what it could have been in my opinion. I know objectively the prequel trilogy has a ton of issues, but the fighting was not one of them, so I just really wish that Nick Gillard was brought back to coordinate these fights going forward. So ultimately, the action was solid but not outstanding by any means in my opinion, which mirrors my thoughts on the show as a whole. Going into this show, as it's essentially a sequel to Rebels, the two biggest question marks were Ezra and Thrawn. Where are they and how are they coming back into the fold? At the end of Episode 6, Sabine finds Ezra, and he's just shacking up with a bunch of crab people. Okay, I guess that's one thing he could be doing. But it is just about the lamest direction they could have gone with Ezra. Ezra could have been undercover as a stormtrooper in Thrawn's army, just waiting for his chance to strike. He could have been a held captive of Thrawn's forces in a situation where they were just using him for his force abilities. Since the Night Sisters are there, we could have also got a situation where they were mind-controlling Ezra, and Ezra could have been the lead stormtrooper with the gold mask. Any of these directions would have been interesting, but ultimately we just got the most basic and uninteresting option on the table. As far as Thrawn's involvement here, he's fairly cool. It's kind of impractical that he and hundreds of stormtroopers were able to survive for numerous years on what seems like a barren planet, but he's still the intimidating force he was in Rebels, and the fact that Thrawn succeeded in his plans is an interesting direction for future projects. With the amount of screen time he was given, I think Thrawn was done just about as well as he could have been. Going forward, I'm very interested in what Thrawn will be doing on Dathomir and what Balin is getting himself into with the Mortis gods. And as far as everything else, we'll see. I don't find Ahsoka or Sabine to be particularly interesting characters at this point, but maybe now that they're on good terms, they could do something interesting. Maybe Shin-Hati, who I actually think has a lot of potential, could be taken into interesting directions. And now that Thrawn is back, maybe other Jedi like Cal Kestis or Luke Skywalker will get involved. So overall, I thought Ahsoka was an alright show that opened some interesting possibilities, but was a bit underwhelming in a few regards. If you enjoyed this breakdown of the Ahsoka show and are interested in further explorations of screen stories, please feel free to drop a like and subscribe. If you feel like I missed anything or you disagree with anything I said, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments.